الحمد لله رب العالمين صلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and welcome to Islamic Oasis Live. Brothers and sisters, I'm sure all of you are following what's taking place in LA, that is Los Angeles, the city of angels, as they call it. Uh, it hasn't been city of angels for a while, and it's seen a lot, a good share of the protest that you are seeing in LA. We've had history of protest in LA with Rodney King, which was really something that I think we've remembered that for generations. That happened in '90s, and almost all of LA was burning at that time, and that was due to police brutality. Then that continued on to what we saw in, different parts of, uh, the issue of police brutality did not really actually go away. And then we are seeing what we are seeing today on the streets, and that's a lot, has a lot to do with immigration policies, new administration trying to prove that it's tough on immigration. But as we know, brothers and sisters, the United States is very much dependent on cheap labor, both at home and overseas. And this matters because it affects the economy, affects jobs, it affects the average American in when we think about what an immigrant is willing to do, or in the case of LA, what Hispanic community is willing to do, and at what wages they're willing to work. So all of these things kind of come into play with what's happening with the protest, and on the top of that, crisis in general, you have a recession that may be creeping in very quickly, which could cause even more stability and things like that. So to discuss all of these things, these events that are taking place, we have brought our brother Isa here, and then we also have Isa, who's a historian. Hopefully, that can shed light on some of these events that we are seeing, and also we have our brother that we have brought him on this show many a times, brother Abu Ata, who is actually live in LA as we speak. So, inshallah, let's begin, brothers and sisters. Let's start with brother Abu Ata. And you are in LA. Actually, I think you are very close to where a lot of the events have taken place in the last few days. Sheikh, in your assessment, in the last few days, are you what are your thoughts, number one, when you're seeing this? Because all of this is not that it's out of the blue, because I think ICE has been raiding for a while, just going into workplaces and things like this. But the idea was to go after criminals. At least that's how they portrayed it. That's how they were marketing this thing. And all of a sudden, people are seeing employees being taken in just out of their workday. Go ahead, Sheikh.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair for inviting us on the show, Brother Shirazi. And, like looking at the situation on the ground, what is happening in LA and across California, which is spreading like a wildfire across the US now, it's kind of saddening. Whenever the governments try to clamp on the people, they have to give some validation. They have to give some sort of justice to further their cause. Whether it's spying on your phone or doing anything that government does. And similar was the situation of this ICE raid that is happening for so-called illegal aliens that came into United States, or that were brought in the United States for various reasons. They initiated the cause that we are going to clamp down on these people, but yes, as soon as if you look at yesterday, they raided in a work field, right? In the
No,
farmers.
they're raiding churches, Sheikh.
Churches, yes. So all of these things that from what we see here in California and LA, people are in shock actually, and all the workers, people are basically hiding. There are people, of course, that are out on the street and they don't really care, but there are people, families that are terrified with what is happening to them. And a lot of people coming from like you know low income families. They are earning every day to survive, to feed their families, and they are hardworking people. So it's very difficult to see this situation. But what is happening is just a cover up of we are going to get the illegal alien. But anyone they would see that is as a foreigner, and this is one of the scapegoat that is being used in many governments, which we can discuss in further. But it all started from going after illegal immigrants, going after those who are violent, going after those who are actually criminals, to ended up going into the farmhouses to capture people and ship them back home or put into the detention camp. So it's very saddening of what we see right now.
Brother Isa, this is something that I've heard this. What I'm going to ask you, this was something that was new, that was at least discussed in the 80s and 90s. The idea that when Hispanic used to look at California as original Mexico, right? That was the indigenous land.
Yeah.
Because I saw some websites, even I don't know, he was this person, he was on Democracy Now! And some other shows. And when they asked him regarding this thing, I mean, he had a whole different narrative, and which was, look, we are the indigenous people, we are the real people of these lands. And he said something very interesting. He said the fight for our lands, which is happening, the indigenous people are fighting, whether it's in Gaza, where people from their own land are fighting a colonial mind, colonialists that are coming in, and here we are facing the same thing, which was very interesting for me. That number one, the impact of Gaza, the and how the stands that people of Gaza have taken. I think people are looking at this as an example to
Yeah.
say we can also take a stand.
Yeah.
And but uh, I mean, if you can expound on that, the idea of indigenous people, they're not looking at this thing as a legal or illegal matter. They're not looking at this as, do I have American passport or no? Did I come in legally or illegally? But there is some ideological understanding here. I mean, it could be Marxist, it could be socialist, but there's something is there. When you look at this, how are what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So first of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for having me. And inshallah, this is beneficial for everyone. So it's very interesting to think about, right? Like the first thing you notice is the broad spectrum of people at these protests, because it's not just Hispanics there, right?
Hmm.
You see white Americans, you see Black Americans, um, Asian Americans, and it points to something which you highlighted, that there is something ideological here, that it could be something like some sort of socialist thought, or something derived from something Marxist. And I think that makes perfect sense, because some of the things you described in the intro, the conditions that we're looking at in the United States right now they're pretty dire in many ways. We have a housing crisis, uh, we have a student loan debt crisis. People aren't getting jobs despite getting their degrees and going into said debt. Um,
Hmm.
there's this fear of an AI takeover. So basically, all the things that were promised, hey, look, you go to school, you work hard, you be a good person, you'll get the American dream. These things are evaporating right before everybody's eyes, right? And that points to, I mean, that results in a complete lack of confidence in the system, in this capitalist system that we exist in. And for the youth, a lot of that has been pushed even further by seeing things like Gaza, like you pointed out, where, of all the barking about human rights and, liberal values and this and that, there's been nothing, not a single. They haven't been able to break the siege in what, like a few months now, and then that's on top of almost 2 years of nonstop bombardment. So yeah, there's this lack of confidence in the existing structure has definitely pushed people to try to explore new things, and maybe even push them into more extreme positions than ever before. Like the other day, I was watching this rally that was held Bernie Sanders, who was once the poster boy for socialism and the real Democratic Party or the new Democratic Party. And I've never seen this before. People were shouting at him, genocide denier,
Oh, wow.
like yeah, like straight up like and he's trying to be like, oh no, it's more to this than meets the eye, blah blah blah. But all that to say that it highlights that there's a complete loss of faith in the system, even in the Democratic Party itself, which for a long time used to maybe prop up Bernie Sanders to show that look, we can give you a candidate, we can give you somebody who has these values, these socialist values. But even that was at this point, it's not enough. It's far too it's too center. It's not to the left anymore. And you see that in these protests that are happening too, where there's a reason it's not just Hispanics just standing up for themselves. There's other people. Obviously, going to the second point, the point that you made about the indigenous reclaiming of land, I think, yeah, a lot of that must be connected to Gaza. I think people see that there's a fight to be had, and it's not just a matter of, immigration or paperwork or what the law says. Because at this point, everybody's seen that the law means nothing to certain people. So, yeah.
No, that's very interesting. That's true. I mean, that's yes, that is true. I mean, when we look at, I guess, go ahead, brother. I mean, these are, I mean, very interesting points our brother brought up here. I mean, the idea that, when you look at world, the so-called rule of law, and that was always brought up, whether it's in the United Nations or all of this. I mean, is it coming home? Is this what's happening to the U.S. where everything is crumbling now? Of course, we can take that with a bit of salt and what it means to crumble. It may, but the idea that the rule-based law, or what they call that, what's the exact terminology? Something like that, right? Rule-based, or I mean, who is it? The elite. Look, when the slogans that we are seeing, the posters that we're seeing in these protests, uh, you know, billionaires are the problem. Um, Corporate, complete, corporations running the show. There's a lot of people with a lot of money out there, and
Yep.
they were benefiting from these workers who work for them for pennies. And then when at at their will, they're just saying, okay, get out now. So I mean, this has to have effects, akhi, yani, from both international perspective and local perspective.
Yes, of course. And what we are just discussing, I witnessed it myself, like where people are on the ground here in California are discussing about these things, right? The discussion is that, when United States goes and says, Israel belongs to, Palestine belongs to Israel, Israelis, or to put in right terms, Zionists, because they were the original inheritor of the land, then this opens a whole new conversation about, like, people living in the America, like what happened to the people who were killed in millions and millions just to settle these white people who are claiming their land today. So it has that, people are questioning about it, that it's actually a reclaim of their land. It is actually their land. That's why they are very brave when they're coming out into the protest. And of course, like all of these things have patterns. If you look at it, whether which is in the United States, or we talk about India or other powers that exist in the world, they seems like they try to utilize. Of course, the left wing were using all of these things that Trump cut down as their benefit. So they were making money from all of these workers. They had organizations that they were benefiting from. Trump campaigns against them that I am the one who have the solution. Let's make America great again. But then once he gets elected and he tried to put all these tariffs and other stuff, which was just a hoax and it did not work. You need something to back yourself up. If you don't have play this type of drama, like how Modi plays drama in India, if you don't play these dramas, then people and public will go against you because you don't have a solution. So in order to keep the public together, you have to create this scenario. You have to actually multiply these issues where
I
you
mean,
make
look,
it look like.
even the mayor, I think the mayor of the city, she said that she keeps repeating this. We are being used. Something is happening for, it's like almost some type of something out of the playbook that he wants to make us an example for something. I mean, people are trying to figure that out. That what is the reality behind this type of? I mean, you're talking about Coast Guard being used, 700 Marines being sent. Uh, I mean, this is so. Think about this. Let's say if are they willing? Both of you guys can get in this, but what are they going to do? Send in military for every city where there's protest? Can they even afford that, or could that itself become the reason for collapse of the country?
Of
Go ahead.
course, I mean, what
Go ahead.
the tactic that we see that is being utilized, which many citizens in America are questioning, is these are not the tactics that United States used against its own people. Even though this is a tendency that they have been always, they might not be vocal about. Like for example, in previous administration, there were people that were being deported, right? But they were not made into an issue. They were not made into a vocal thing. So this action of being police state or white dominance, or these culture are being pushed to. In my understanding, is that if you look at the military-industrial complex that exists in America, with the Trump, they're actually they're upscaling. They're selling more products, and their stock market is going up. And that is because the right wing is composed of the military mindset. Whether they are being used overseas, or if the overseas conflict is not happening, it's coming home. However, the left wing is more like how they are socialist in nature, and they utilize all the social services to fill the pocket. However, the money doesn't trickle down into the pockets of the people. People were pissed off at the left wing, and they saw the failure of the left wing. That is why they elected the right wing, thinking that they have the solution. They are the one who's going to finish off all the homelessness that exists in California, in Los Angeles. You go under the huge buildings, and people that are sleeping, they're on drugs. So you see all of these problems were accumulating, and right wing, they cash onto it, winning the election. But after winning the election, what are you going to do? What solution are you going to present? Then they create this type of situation to maintain their power, which I think they're not going to last 1 or 2 years until like something big happens, because then the left wing gets a chance to expose them and tell them, look, they were talking about promising all of these solutions to the public. The public is going to get rich. People are going to get rich. They're going to get, their bank accounts will go up. They will live a better lifestyle, but there is nothing happening. So, uh-huh.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Continue. Finish your thought.
No, these were some of the aspects that is that's what's happening within US. Of course, all the cards that were played into, we're gonna end the war in foreign countries, and we will do this and that. Those things, people saw that they were like a bunch of failures. And the US was basically mocked on the international stage after Trump took power. And that is why you saw the crack happening between Trump and then other political elite or capitalists like Elon Musk, who was hailed as a hero at one time. People started burning his cars. People started doing, because people got upset. And they saw no real result. It was all hoax about elections, and the money was pumped in. So that is why they're creating this solution, these issues. And of course, this is not something that one person can control. Maybe there are people on the left side that have their own interests, and they're going to make this problem bigger and regain the power, right? But the crack between the left and right is becoming more and more. We were thinking that, okay, maybe when the right wing comes into power, they will be able to unite America. They will be able to unite the country. But it has exposed even more that no, it's actually going into the direction that they didn't want it to go.
Yeah.
I mean, going after.
Go ahead, please.
I mean,
Uh,
going after the poor and the needy and those who are low class families is the best example that they're unable to solve this problem, and they're doing everything to help their rich friends.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned the divide between the left and the right and how deep it's gotten to the point that you see maybe even what you said that maybe some of this what's being allowed or the LAPD being held back at certain points and like there's definitely an imperative from the left, from the Democrats. I don't want to say left because they're not really truly left at all anymore, but yeah, from them to kind of future-proof in a sense, right? Like even in Illinois, we've seen the governor try to push himself as this anti-Trump, uh, 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 candidate for the future. Taking very vocal stands against Trump and trying to show that, look, show somebody, whether it's the American people or the powers that be around him, that I can stand against this guy. It's a political move for him for maybe the next election or who knows. And then even in California with Governor Newsom, it's the same sort of thing where it's like maybe we should let this fester. Like let's let this get a little bit out of hand. Uh, stretch Trump makes Trump stretch his authority in a way that shows how heavy-handed he is, and really, because now you're seeing some divides even on the right, with what you described between Elon and Trump. But you see the right has always had this thing about state rights, right? Like even from this time of the Civil War in America, even now, like they believe that the Civil War actually happened not because of slavery, but because the rights of the states as given by the Constitution were being destroyed by the federal government. They don't like a strong centralized power overtaking the rights of the states to their individual actions, right? So now you have a hardline right-wing president deploying National Guard and Marines, to overwhelm the state structure. Whereas if you go back in history, the last time that happened was when they were integrating schools for African Americans,
Mm.
and to protect the African Americans, they would deploy the National Guard to kind of enforce the civil rights acts that were being passed in the 60s and 70s, right? So and from the hardliners, it was the same thing, is that, look, our state rights as what was given in the Constitution to us are being trampled. And now you see, like this is going to cause a problem in the right wing itself, in the Republican camp itself, because it's just inconsistent with their methodology.
I mean, look, there's been almost 24,000 arrests. They're saying that they're willing to give $1,000 per person for people to self-deport. Things. I mean, this is, we used to see these tactics. We saw that in India, we saw that in Bangladesh. I remember, these rapid forces that would come in Bangladesh. State agencies, state basically, um, uh, you know, uh, they would come in unmarked cars, take people away. I mean, this is, I mean, U.S. has trained a lot of agencies overseas in these tactics. So this is nothing. I mean, it's not new that they're doing, they're doing it, but doing it here uh, is something. I mean, it's amazing. At what levels the U.S. The thing is that they might have done this in more uh, under the table terms kind of thing. But now it's like almost they want people to see this. Uh, I mean, so where is this thing going? I mean, if you look at the protest, you have slogans like "Remove the King." So now here's the thing: is U.S. Uh, turning into an authoritarian state? I mean, is it already, or are we seeing it go? Some intellectuals in the country are already calling it an authoritarian state because the amount of, security agencies and police and military and National Guard, all of this that is being used.
Yeah.
So let me ask this: So what's happening here? Is it authoritarian state or is it getting there? Second, if it gets there, can capitalism survive in authoritarian state?
So to the first part of the question, I do have an idea that um, when you see, and it points to what I was saying earlier, that the society in this country as a whole is losing confidence in its own system, right? So, and we see that throughout the world, right? When the West has imposed capitalism in, say, the Muslim world, what happens? You have to be authoritarian because the society does not agree with the ideology that's being imposed on it. So how do you subdue that? How do you enforce it? You have to
Hmm.
be authoritarian. You have to force people to swallow it, right? And as the divides and the issues, the economic issues and the wealth disparities get bigger and bigger in this country, for sure people are going to completely lose confidence in this. And then you will have to be authoritarian just to keep the order, just to keep law and order in a certain way. Or you risk these new movements and something drastic happening because obviously the political system has completely lost its appeal to most people. As we've seen from the last few elections, the number of people voting keeps it's becoming a problem, right?
I mean, it's
And
dropping on every 4 years. It's dropping.
exactly. And there was something you mentioned a while ago. This organization called Union del Barrio, UDB,
Yes,
which is a socialist Hispanic movement. It started, I think, in the 80s. And the language they use is very interesting. They're talking about self-defense, you know?
resistance, man. Not even
Exactly.
self-defense. They're saying we are going to resist.
Yeah, and
These
you see
terms,
they've been active even in places like LA from what I've seen they might not use guns right now, but what they do is they go around with megaphones and informing people of ISIS movements in their neighborhoods to kind of
yeah.
warn people, go hide, go do this, and showing people how to deal with them, providing lawyers for them, things like that. So yeah, you'll probably just see these sorts of more independent movements, which is a real problem for a state that's supposed to be a world power because that opens the door for infiltration, right? Like China or Russia or whoever can utilize groups like this. And we've seen that in history where there was the African American Communist Party, which was funded by Russia many times. So that's a really big threat within your own borders. So I mean, it's almost like authoritarianism is inevitable.
Yes, something is cooking. What do you think, Brother Ata? Any your observations on this? I mean, because especially you being on the ground, I'm sure you've heard of Del Barrio, this movement. I don't know if you this is the guy. He was also on Democracy Now, and he was saying very clear. I mean, literally he said, "Look, if you're gonna come into our neighborhoods, and you're gonna kidnap," and he said, "You are kidnapping," and he was emphasizing, "You are kidnapping our kids. You're kidnapping our women and elderly, so we're not gonna take this." But here's the question: Look, Black Panthers were crushed, which was a communist party, and at least um, uh, you know had that ideological forward. Then you have this one here. But during Black Panthers, Soviet Union existed. There was somebody that was funding this. But today, who? I mean, can they use? I mean, let's say because I'm looking at China. The only thing I can think of is the Maoists in China, or because China, I'm sure, is funding the next lights in India, for instance, right? But here in US, do you really think that somebody is willing to fund a Marxist socialist type movement like this?
Even though the ideology of communism is dead because of its failure to serve the people, however, the concept still exists in the minds within the belts of Russia and China, even though it can never be implemented into the state as a system again. It was crushed by utilizing the Muslims. United States used Muslims to crush this ideology in Afghanistan. However, the Chinese see this as an opportunity, and this is one thing that as a politician, a lot of politicians they don't speak about your enemy with open mouth. However, Trump does that, and Trump does that to win his right wing belt. However, that comes with a cost. When the enemy like China, which he openly says is the enemy, sees this, they will seize the opportunity, whatever uprising happening within America and the differences that exist, they will try to exacerbate and make it bigger so that they can face the challenges. And this is common for any country. America itself, as a foreign policy, meddles around the world, causing these chaos and issues. So it won't be a unique situation that not as an ideology, but they see it as an opportunity to help destabilize the nation, or at
I
least
mean, look,
to.
look. Let me add something here, and then I would love to know your thoughts just on what you're saying. Uh, when we're looking at these elite universities, okay, I mean, because at the end of the day, all of the protests are young, they're youth. They're not the 8 years old, 80-year-olds out there. These are young college age youth. And if you look at what's happening at the Harvards, or Yales, or these elite Ivy League universities, one of the things that we're seeing is that the crackdown on the students is really on Chinese students in the name of anti-Semitism. It's very clear. They're fine. Even at Harvard, they're saying, it's anti-Semitic and then this and it's that. But when you look at the real numbers, it's all going against Chinese students who were applying, and they're basically, cutting off all types of visas to international students. Can we say that China did use these students that they were coming from China to these elite universities, and they have had their effect? We can is this something that I think I don't know. Again, your thoughts. Anyone can jump in,
Absolutely.
both
I mean,
on both.
if you look at all the big leftist politician or Democrats, they don't have a capitalist ideology. I mean, if you really listen between the lines of what they're saying bring like communism, communist ideology, or you can say socialist ideology, and this is really the impact, of what they were able to do. Of course, America doesn't open its border just to so that it can be impacted. It also opens the border to impact others. So, for example, someone that I know, he was in U.S. Armed Forces. He was saying, "Look, the reason why we give the visa to the foreigners is so that they can come and learn about our culture, and they can export it to the Muslim world or other areas of the world." Now, they say the same reason why America was giving the visas to Chinese or Indians or many other nationality for them to come and get recruited here and go back and change the policy into their countries. However, it's a double-edged sword. So just like they're using, the other side can also utilize, and we can see in what happened in the Palestinian movement in America that when they saw this on the campuses, that the Muslim students, they are loyal to Islam, they're loyal to the Muslims, they are going and protesting, and that they are able to mobilize the students on the campuses, they quickly shut it down. So it's a double-edged sword, which creates, anyone can utilize it basically. So if they can influence it, somebody else can influence on the other side. And Chinese were able to utilize this very well, and they were able to influence on these campuses, and that's the reason they went after them.
Sheikh, Brother Isa, globalization supposed to have these trickle down effects. I mean, it's not trickling in LA. So,
Yeah, I mean, like, how can it? We there and that's what I mean by a lack of a alternative being provided to people within the country itself. Like there is there is no it's almost like, since that time of Reaganomics and all that, when the whole tax structure was renovated for the complete benefit of the upper class. Since then it's just like been like a tumbling block that goes downhill. All it does is pick up steam. It's not going the other way anymore. Uh, they talked about people being these personalities being almost revolutionary, like when Barack Obama was elected president, first black president. Is going to be a lot of changes. What happened? He was people describe him as more right wing than some of the right wing presidents of the 70s, you know? So it's like when you have this one track plunge that the country's going towards, then you there's you're not giving people any sort of voice, even the whole talk about democracy, vote your guy out. If they talked about punish Biden. Muslims talked about this a lot. Use the power of your vote to get your voice out there. It's all been proven to be irrelevant. They got as for the Muslims issue, they got Biden out, and then an even more hardened war criminal came into power. And then for other people that maybe that wasn't even their concern, their concerns are economic and just I want to buy a house or I want to go to school, I want to get a good job. There's nobody looking out for their interests within the political spectrum, you know? And that's becoming more and more apparent every day. And with that, all you're gonna have is chaos
I mean,
because
look, you have like I'm sure you guys are watching in Kansas. There these KKK Reclaim America marches going on.
yeah,
Um, but look, some things that happen in 60s, 70s, 80s, and then 90s too. But a lot of that struggle at that time, it was all a lot of African American struggle, for civil rights and things like this.
right.
But you never saw where minorities came together. I mean, it's not that I'm still not seeing a lot of
Yeah.
African Americans in these uh, protests. It's still kind of, I don't know, who is running um, these protests? Is it mm, the Spanish and the African Americans are kind of seeing eye to eye now and they're coming together? Because if you look at the history of both of these groups, they were always the government always wanted them to fight each other.
Did it against,
This
yeah.
is something that we've seen. They really always pitted one against the other. But now there's a whole different kind of a movement taking place where you're seeing them come together. So I mean, when we talk about resistance, man, I mean, is that possible? Number one. Number two, what what's the issue? The minorities might join hands and they will be either a third party that other than Democratic and Republican Party. Are we seeing through usage of these crises a formation of a third party in this country that could calm things down, or are we looking at things going towards a civil war?
Um, I don't want to say you don't want to just throw around civil war
Yeah,
just
yeah,
be
of course,
yeah,
but
it's
it's
like
just
but there is something to that where what ends up happening from this, it could be something like a third party, but we've also kind of seen that third parties in the country just don't do well just because of the way the system is set up rather than the organic grassroots organization. It's like, you need to have a certain amount of money just to get into debates, right? Like you cannot get into a national debate if you don't have a certain amount of money. So it's almost
I
like
mean,
this.
George Soros is there; he can provide the funds.
Yeah, but what's in it for him?
Supposedly, he's in it already. I mean, there are already people who are accusing him of funding these protests. But again, I
I
mean,
mean,
that
it,
could
it
be
it could be like that's what I'm saying. If there's a sense that in this country from the political elite and the upper class elite, the rich folks, that Trump appealing to his hardline right wing white nationalist base is too it's going to cause too much insecurity, then they would definitely go against it. I mean, we've already seen that with they went after those guys. You guys remember the Proud Boys?
right.
Yeah, they're a lot of their folks got arrested.
But there was no National Guard against them, bro.
Yeah, but I
I mean,
mean,
I mean, it's not like National Guard and Marines were not coming out of, I mean, and he's calling it insurrection. First, he called
yeah,
it insurrection.
yeah, he called it insurrection. He's even going as far as to say that it might actually be like something foreign behind it, some sort of foreign funding or instigated. So, I mean, that's
What are you seeing, brother? I thought on the ground. I mean, I saw the pictures that you sent out the other day. I mean, you have police officers, police cars everywhere. I mean, it's like this is this new to you, or this is something?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I had something in mind that I want to share. Like just about 15 years ago, there were people that would, share proudly. At that time, social media was becoming more of the norm. People would share pictures and videos, and you would see someone arguing with the cops, right? They stop them for a traffic violation, and they will say, "You don't have this right to stop me," right? And all of these things existed in America. However, if you look at the atmosphere today, it's not the same America. It's actually distancing from its own propagated value that they propagated across the world, across the globe. And one of the examples is Alex Padilla. He's a senator. He was
Yeah, he was
dragged
arrested.
out
Yeah,
by FBI
yeah.
for
That was
asking
interesting for me
questions.
to see. Yeah, because I thought first when I looked at the video twice, and I was surprised that FBI was pulling him out rather than let's say even just let's say from somebody from average police officer, but the FBI pulled him out, man, and then
Yeah, yeah.
put him
I
on the
mean,
floor.
and he said, "I'm senator, like, what are you doing?" So this is like when empire goes against their own values that they propagate across the world. So it's not actually the same thing that we witnessed before. It's very strange, very different, actually. People are in fear. And along with the fear, of course, there will be people that will organize, they will take on the street. You think like people who were throwing stones and pelting the cops' cars, they didn't know that America will be able to find out. I mean, they have these applications now installed in people's phone, NSA monitoring everyone basically, right? So in this day and age, they know that they will be able to find, but they're willing to go that far. They're willing to go take this chance.
This is
So
Sheikh. I mean, there's a lot of questions that we need to discuss that, but because I mean, look, poverty can push people to limits. There is no question about that. I mean, we know even the Prophet ﷺ said, yeah, or Ali radiallahu statements that poverty can lead to kufr, and it's very true. I mean, yesterday I was listening to another podcast, and they were saying, when we look at the behavior of, for instance, crime in this country in general, because when you're looking at what's happening to in these um, demonstrations or protests where young people are looting stores. For instance, they were looting in LA. There's looting. I mean, they're so worried about looting happening here Saturday. Yeah, because there's a huge protest that's planned here, and then y- you know, and the king is planning his birthday. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is not this is not Bollywood movie, bro. I mean, this is you're talking about the king is planning his birthday with all the tanks on the streets, which supposedly has been canceled due to weather issues, as that's what they're saying. And then you have these behavioral issues with youth, and the number one reason they're giving for this much rage and this much, the anger is literally poverty. Poverty is pushing people to beyond limits. They're willing to do whatever it takes. Heck, if I'm going to go to jail, you'll hear things like, "Yeah, I'll go to jail. At least I'll get to eat." So, Sheikh, I mean, so are the cracks now in the system are and just are they just more visible? It's not like protest and demonstrations did not occur before.
yeah, of course. I mean, that's one of the things, underlying problem that is feeding into this is being people not being able to feed, and the inflation is high, and that's why President says, "Oh, or the king, whatever you want to call him,
The king, man,
he's
come on,
the king."
that's
Yeah, the king said, you don't need a $30. All you need is $2. So why
yeah,
don't he leave all his wealth, empire of wealth that he has created? Why doesn't he
yeah.
donate? If you don't need $30, why you need all of these money? So a few wealthy elite are exploiting the entire society. Look at how many elites, wealthy elite Trump has around him, right? In his cabinets and all around him. This is very telling that the wealth is being accumulated into the hands of the few, and the masses, they are suffering, man. They are suffering. They're trying to make their ends meet. They are on paycheck to paycheck. Most of them, they're in debt, under debt.
Yeah.
What they are going to do, and they
And
are
now
keep.
he's saying he's gonna cut next month, by the way, or in the coming months, they're going to cut off 40%, 40% from uh, rental, subsidies that they were giving to elderly, because they're saying majority of uh, homeless in this country will be elderly. 40% will be cut. So you just imagine where this thing is going, uh, and then he's surrounded by close to something like $400 billion. And when you think of the advisors that he has. So let me ask you something, brother Isa. I mean, you're in Chicago. I mean, you've seen your side of, when we look at the kind of crime that we see in Chicago. What are your observations on this? On why so many youth are so angry? Akhi?
I mean, I think a lot of it is a psychological issue when you think about it too. Um, you know, we have poverty throughout the world, right? Like extreme poverty that Americans don't even imagine exists. We see
Mm,
that, right?
mm,
But that's a different kind of poverty just because there isn't really a promise made to those poor that we are the best. What if you do what we say, things you can climb up, you can be this, you can be that. Over here, what we're seeing is like it's like when you really love somebody and then you find out that they're actually a terrible person, it hurts you a little bit, right? Like there's pain involved. That's what we're seeing here. It's like the people are now seeing the reality and at the same time being told the lie of, oh no, this is still the best. We are the best. Our system is the best. Just keep doing, keep just being a wage slave, work for minimum wage. Eventually you'll get something. Just keep working hard, right? And that the inconsistency between the message and the reality is probably what's driving people to this level, right? In many parts of the world, you don't really have a message to the poor. There's just reality. They're just poor and there's no way out, and they know it. Over here, it's coming to a point where it's like, oh, okay, everything we were told is actually a lie. And that's the real that's like the spark, And I think this thing, whatever is happening right now, might have started with been kicked off with the anti-immigration or the ICE raids and protesting that, but that's like a spark plug for all the other issues. And that's going to be the interesting thing because and then on the political side you have this problem that Trump actually has where he has to please his base of voters and supporters, and at the same time he has to please the wealthy that he's surrounded with, and that's another inconsistency that's going to come about. It's already starting, but it'll get worse. The Elon Musk break was just the first step in that. We're going to see probably much more of that sort of thing happening in the near future.
I mean, there's two questions that are very important here. We won't take more than maybe let's say 10 minutes or so. The thing is when we think about capitalism, or uh, when we United States has gone through many phases, right? Uh, the fall of Soviet Union, if not the collapse, and then it became the sole superpower, and in many ways it just was able to do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
But now um, there's China that's constantly challenging U.S. Authority in the world. There is a block that's being created by Europeans, especially with what United States has done with NATO and Russia-Ukraine conflict, that they're not able to solve the occupation issues, that they're not able to solve. Uh, there's tensions that are happening throughout the Middle East. Capitalism is at serious, I mean, there's crossroads at this point. But the thing is, Sheikh, there's no
Alternative.
one challenging it. Even without a challenge, it's falling apart. But that's one thing. But does that mean it's just sick and is being given medicine to survive? How do you guys look at this? The worldwide capitalism with its different faces, whether it's Europe, whether it's Russia, whether it's Central Asia, wherever you look at, you know, it's capitalism just has a different face. And
I,
here we are at home where, you know, it's willing to use massive force against its own people.
I think there's something to be said about America's reluctance right now to deal with China and accept what China actually is. You know, the world is not what it was like you described, where America is the sole superpower capable of doing whatever it wanted economically, whatever it wanted militarily, right? And China has shown the world that, you know, they've even come up with like their own bank, the ASEAN thing, right? And they've shown
Exactly.
the world another way to do capitalism, maybe that isn't as unilateral as America's is, right? Now, the challenge becomes for America, are you willing to accept this role, this new role that you'll have to play in the world? It may not be China's world entirely, but it's definitely not your world anymore, right?
Mm.
And how they respond to that is going to be, and that's one of the big reasons why we're even seeing these are the wealth disparity rising in America. For the longest time, this country's been able to deal with it by just, you know, leeching more off of other places, leveraging their power, economic power, military power to just siphon off more from other places, whether it be South America or the Middle East or the Far East. And that's kept their population in almost like a sedated state, you know, where you have enough wealth, even with a wealth disparity, that there's a middle class, for example, right? And now with the emergence of China and then the shrinking of the middle class, America no longer has the capability to put bandages on its own uh, inadequacies like that. They have to deal with the reality of the world, you know, and that's gonna come back home, that's exactly what's happening. People, we don't have the opportunities in this country that we used to in many ways. And that a lot of that has to do with the rise of other powers.
Sheikh, but I thought, you know, what are your thoughts on this, Sheikh? I mean, is this, let me ask you something. Deep state, look, United States, especially when it came to Trump, uh, it seems the last time that he was basically taken out, he wasn't or re-elected. Uh, One of the things that was against him was that he didn't fulfill his promise to control or at least subdue China. And now, can is this deep state playing behind the covers? Is that can that be? I mean, I know we're talking about foreign uh, hands. It could be China. It could be whoever trying to destabilize. But is there somebody trying to tell, you know, Mr. Trump that look, you're not doing what we're asking you to do? You know, by bringing people on the streets. I mean, that is viable, isn't it?
And yeah, I mean, of course, that, you know, and that was cleared in the very first term of Mr. President. I mean, Mr. Trump,
King,
uh,
King. Yeah.
King Trump. You know, so yeah, it was, you know, the whole reason why FBI launched their first attack on the Capitol Hills, or they inserted people into create this chaos, is to bring Trump basically under their control. So Trump 1.0, if you notice, was different than Trump 2.0.
Mm,
What Trump 2.0 is he's acting like a politician, even though, sometimes things get rough and he goes out of his mind. but it's not quite the same way how he was acting in the first term when he was more uncontrollable. So what we are seeing, and they both, in this ideology that currently is implemented, they both claims to save democracy, right? And when they both are claiming to save the democracy, like for example, when the California governor, he said, "Oh, we want to save the democracy, or democracy is under attack." And then you have the left wing. They say, "Oh, these are socialists, these are communists, and they have taken over, and we need to take our country back, and we need to democratize our country." So when they both are pulling each other, there's of course a third person, third party, or third influencer behind the scene, which people are not seeing, which is known as deep state. Of course, they use both the right wing and the left wing to continue their agenda, what they're doing. I don't want to sound like a conspiracist, but look at, even in the terms of like Trump coming into power, we had shuyukh and ulama. They're like, "Oh, God saved his life to end all of these stuff." I mean, how could you be an Islamic scholar and push the ummah into such a dark direction, where the owner of these ideologies are saying, it's failing actually. So there are concept, like there are hands of the deep state, but also these situations are not always as calculated, and they can go anywhere. Basically, rise in the left wing, the differences in the right wing, the concepts of replacement, something that the white people believe, that all these races, they are taking over our country, so we're not the same, so we need to replace them with our own population, where in future they will have concepts of increasing their population. And they're already talking about giving $5,000 per child and stuff like that, which is to maintain their hegemony. But truly, I mean, it can go anywhere. It can go out of the hand, and it can lead to the collapse, as we are seeing. People are getting really pissed at this time. So yeah, there are multiple theories that exist. We truly, don't know where things are going to go.
Shif, last question for you. One more, maybe, just for Brother Ata. I don't, there's this book written. It's called the Jakarta Syndrome. I don't know if any of you guys have read it or not, but it's a very interesting book. It talks about the role of CIA in Indonesia. And one of the things that the United States did, especially as a new power when it emerged, was it used it, it basically it yeah, I guess you can say it used the communist versus Muslim situation in Indonesia. Over 1 million people were killed in this, confrontation that took place between the two groups. Ikhwan played a very big role in this at that time, also in Indonesia, of course, in the name of Islamists. But later on, it seems like somehow, Suharto came in power, if you guys remember, and Suharto came on this ticket of he's the savior. He bought in even the socialists at the end of the whole thing. And then, of course, being a largest Muslim country, they had to obviously please the Muslims too. But this is and the whole idea was to remove the Chinese, at that time Japanese even, influence in Indonesia, and in that Southeast Asia in general. That's what America did, and in the process killed 1 million people, which I don't think they killed. But South America has been communist for a long time. It has a lot of communist. You have the Che Guevaras, you have the Fidels, you have Hugo Chavez, and all these guys that, and you see that in protests and things like this. What possibilities are out there? I mean, as far as influence of South America in the United States, especially in places like California, Arizona. I mean, you're there. I don't know if you've ever spoken to Spanish population there. If you've ever mingled with them, discussed anything with them, what do you see, Akhi, when you are on the streets talking to these people?
Of course, I mean, there is, like once we call the America the melting pot, it's actually boiling pot currently, where people are boiling basically. The racial degradation that we see amongst the ruling elite versus the people that are hardworking. Now, regarding the South America, I would disregard that any South America is playing any role in America. If you look at the cartels or the people who America is trying to push out from California or across the U.S., if you go into just down the street in Mexico, all of the guns that cartels carry, where are they coming from? They are U.S. made. They are U.S. military guns. So if you look at these issues that exist in the next door to America, that America is trying to prevent itself from, or claiming to prevent itself from, it's actually the issues caused by the American elites or those who are benefiting from it behind the scene.
I
There
mean,
are
from the
few,
drugs to the cartels. That's
of
interesting
course.
that you bring in this point. I actually forgot to even bring in. There is an article that I read the other day that there's a lot of money being made through by the cartels, even in these crises, as we
And then,
speak.
yeah, and then there is a big question: how come these cartels have the American guns, which are not just regular guns? These
I mean, they
are
have American
military
guns, they have
equipments.
American uniforms, they have. I mean, these guys are
Yeah,
something else. The
military
way,
grade.
huh?
Military grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that the country in itself and those elites that are sitting in America, they are playing this game with their own people rather than anyone from influencing from outside. Of course, all the governments that are going to sit down. In India, which used to lick the feet of America and the right wing, they used to worship King Trump. These same right wing in India are burning the flag of America. Can you imagine?
Yeah, this is another very interesting twist in the whole game. America,
So
Indians
they
burning
are
America.
going to, America dumped them into Pakistan and India war, right? So
Ah,
the Indian right wing, they are pissed at America. They are not happy with America in its role. So of course they are going to do so when these things are happening in US. All of these foreign enemy that US has used or created, they are going to play their part. But America is still a ruling country in the world. It has a lot of influence, even though it's not the same way how it used to be like 30, 40 years ago. But it does have quite a bit of influence. And, smaller countries in South America, they might be able to do some sort of things, but they will not be able to recruit things on masses. When these things are happening, these are internal. These are programs created by the CIA, by the FBI, by just like we see in India when they committed this crime in Kashmir. It's not Pakistan that's coming in and doing it. India creates these problems, and they are trying to portray as if they are the true defender of the land. Same with the right wing in America. They are creating these problems to present as they are the true defender of this land,
no,
rather
but
than somebody.
in the protest, Sheikh, I mean, there are there are American-born youth that are part of these protests. Yes, sir. I mean,
Yes,
these are
of
these.
course. I mean, these are there is yes, of course. Then and that's because there is no solution. All the rhetoric that were talked about the American dreams, they're collapsing in front of the eyes of the people, and they can be very well influenced with the foreign ideas that exist because they don't see the solution within their system. All of these dreams they're talking about, entire families are broken, entire their bank accounts are broken.
Yeah.
They have been racially discriminated.
But Brother
Who do
Isa, these students, I mean, from your background here, I mean, you've done history and things like this. Sheikh, none of these are educated youth. I mean, I don't know if in protests themselves how many are. I'm not sure level of their education, but the encampments, for instance, that are happening in Columbia University, NYU, Harvard, and University of Chicago. I mean, these are not average youth that are sitting, on a corner of the street somewhere So what does this mean to you, man? That, that you, the elite universities are producing youth that are actually, standing against the system that
Yes.
gave them, in some ways, I mean, obviously, some type of wealth that they can go to these Ivy League schools.
I mean, I think that just part of it is like that's almost natural, just because uh, anything intellectual or the movements usually comes from middle class backgrounds where you do have a chance to get an education and a chance to think rather than just having to work all the time to feed yourself. But that aside, I think um, when it's really the hypocrisies just become too obvious. Even like even if like in American universities, what makes them good and known throughout the world and as powerful as they are in terms of being think tanks for economics and military and political science, foreign policy, all these things, what makes that possible is the fact that they have a level of I don't want to say autonomy, but a level of intellectual freedom, let's call it, right? To be able to come up with ideas. Because you're not going to be able to come up with ideas if you completely clamp down and say you can't think about X, Y, Z. You have to keep it open and then see what that university produces, right? And that the byproduct of that is that when these students come into these universities and they see the failings of the country, then they're forced to ask questions and they don't have a choice at that point because again they've been told all this throughout their lives and even the students that you mentioned a lot of them of course they care about Gaza, they care about human rights, and they care about these things. They deeply do. They have that humanity, but a big factor is also the fact that there's frustration in this country that I have a degree, I can't get a job. Like I went to school for 4 years, 6 years, whatever, and I can't get into my own field. Like there's people who were told, computer science is the way to go. And then for 10 years, everybody did this in college. And now they're just being told, oh no, you're gonna have to find something else. AI is gonna, it can program, it can do this and that, right? So that frustration has to be funneled somewhere. So when you mix that frustration with the fact that the nature of American universities is such that there is a level of intellectual freedom, it it's an inevitable outcome that you have to be able to see this hypocrisy now. You're not you The world is too connected too. You have social media, no news is hidden from you. I mean, it's evidenced by the amount of Jewish youth that stood against the occupying entity. So, and yeah, at the end of the day, like I was mentioning, that to me is the bottom line, is the fact that the American dream is now it's become be an Uber driver and take anxiety medication. And nobody will accept this. Nobody that came up in the rhetoric of this country will be able to accept this.
But that's a final question for you, regarding, I mean, where are the Muslims in all of this? I mean, are they on anxiety medicine trying to drive Ubers, or what's going on, man? I mean, capitalism is exactly. Sheikh, I mean, this is
Yeah,
where, this is a good, I mean, seriously, where are the Muslims in all of this, man?
it's very saddening. Actually, I was writing a small dua that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us your fear more than the fear of deportation. So Muslims, that are living in America, they were supposed to be those who came into America. They studied, they got educated, well education, and they were supposed to think for the ummah. They were supposed to be the voice for the ummah. They were supposed to, basically revolutionize the ummah. But it seems like the American dream that they were chasing for had made them so busy that their voices are almost like gone.
No, I mean, okay, hold on. Before you continue, are we the capitalists that are have we become the capitalists that are trying to maintain the system?
I mean, we have been absorbed into the bigger idea that existed, and that's because we were trying to chase that idea, and we forgotten our own purpose. We were supposed to be the leading nation that is guiding these protesters and telling the people what is the solution, whether right wing is the solution, left wing is the solution, or the solution resides somewhere else. We were the one that should take people, drag them by the hand, and show them this is the solution that exists, and that is none other than Islam. The racial problem that exists, the wealth inequality that exists, the killing of inflation, you name it. You can go, you can talk from top to bottom issues that U.S. is facing, the world is facing. Muslims were the one that was supposed to show the world what Islam is like. But it seems like from the east to the west now, look, you had so-called the jihadi friend of America. He's implementing the policy in Syria. You have all the rulers in the Muslim world that has been exposed. People were talking about the Trump. I mean,
No, but
Sultan.
stay on this point here, Sheikh. Look, look. Let's say even if the Muslims do join, let's say they join these protests. I guess the question is, Sheikh, is that you could have a lot of uh, maybe they'll be forced to do it. I'm not sure, but the idea that look, we are coming out for anti-Zionist protest and Gaza protest and things like this, and even when the Muslims are, I guess what I'm asking, Sheikh, is that are you worried? Because I am, that socialist Marxist ideas are going to penetrate Muslims, let's say second, third generation Muslims in the at the universities or whatever, when they see these youth, also their colleagues taking such amazing, I mean, they're taking stands that Muslims have not. But at one point, they're going to look at them and say, these are the examples to follow. So are we, I mean, is it even worse than, I guess capitalism somehow allows some type of God that you can worship, but you become socialist or communist, there is no direction at all. I mean, this is a mess that we are in. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to ask you a question like this.
No. I mean, that's a very good question, and to answer to that is, oftentimes in the suppression of the religion, the Islam thrives. Whenever they push down the idea that it's supposed to be banned, Islam's supposed to be banned, or the Islamic idea, or the discussion about Islam, it grows under the table. It grows within the families. It grows. There are people that are ready to take this challenge, and even like I understand that the influence that these Muslims they're getting from these college campuses and universities and where they're going. But again, if there was no fear of America, how Muslims were influencing these universities and campuses, they will not shut down. They will not come forward and do it. And
I mean, no, but hold on, Sheikh. Look, you have to convince me that the Muslims were actually behind these encampments. I don't think they were Muslims at all. To be honest, I think they were all mostly socialist, communist, Marxist. They were the ones who were running all these encampments. Muslims actually worked with them to get their voices out.
Correct. And one of the things that Muslims have accepted, the one who migrated, is we are weak. Once they start with a mentality that we are weak, we have nothing to offer to the society, of course they're going to look for someone to support you. Even in the protests that we've been to, we see, and we were telling this on the microphone with the LGBT flag. I said, we don't need you to defend us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will defend us, and we Muslims are enough to defend us. But unfortunately, because the Muslims, they have this weak stance of, we have been granted this honor of living into the West. That is why we can't do anything that will upset the West. We can't do anything that will jeopardize our situation, or that would label us as this or that. So we have taken this position of not being leader. We became the follower, and we became convinced that somebody else will be in the front and we will be behind, and they will lead us. So of course, like whoever works, and they are the one who is going to reap the fruits. And of both the communists and both the capitalists, they have been working hard. They have been putting ideas out there. They have been putting concepts out there. They are engaged with public. They are writing, publishing stuff. They have organizations. They are working together to form the coalition. Whereas Muslims, they fail. They simply latch themselves in somebody else's idea and they move forward. And that's not how a nation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called like best nation in the Quran should act and behave. We should come to our senses. Sometimes it's very disheartening and saddening. Like when you try to look for real like Muslim voices, you can't find. You will find the Muslim voices that will tell you, "Oh, we've survived. We can survive the 4 year of Trump." These are the propagations of the ideas that exist on the platforms, and these are the large voices that does exist. But if you talk about Islam, they will say, "Oh, Islam, don't talk about it. It's a very, it's not even my priority." They say, "Oh, even it's a very low priority for me to bring the Islamic system or call for Islam as a total way of life." So, of course, when you have this defeatist mentality amongst those who are leading the Ummah, those who are the thinkers of the Ummah, then you will see the masses sleeping. Whereas if someone comes forward and they take the lead and say, "No, actually, that's not how it's supposed to be." It's a Muslim Ummah that will tell how to organize the society, how to finish the racism that it does exist between the Hispanic community or the Black community or the white community. And this is how it needs to be done. And whereas we actively work toward this solution, we will see these things coming up. And our old children will become atheists, just like our generation 50, 60 years ago. They were convinced, some of them, that, oh, communism is the solution because it contains some free food and free shelter type of things.
I mean,
And
PLO
then
especially, yeah, it had a lot of effect I mean, when I was going through Southeast Asia and history, and of course even the Middle East, man, it took it by fire. Last question for you, Brother Isa. Jazakallah khair, Brother Abu Ata. I just wanted to, yeah, kind of see what your thoughts on these issues are. But Brother Isa, your understanding. I mean, look what Brother Ata, I mean, he's talking survival, and we've been trying to survive. We 1947 India, so-called British independence. We're trying to survive in India, and we see our conditions in India. Uh, Even we come up with, man, I mean, a million shuhada, or let's say 500,000 shuhada in Syria, and million, maybe close to million handicapped, uh, and orphans and all of this, and even even when we look at these convoys, I mean, may Allah bless them, they're trying to do what they can. Again, still based on nationalism and nationalistic flags. And Sheikh, what do you think? This survival mentality, what has it done to us? Just trying to survive at all costs, survive.
Uh, the
I
word
mean,
that
at
comes
one point he said, "Look, we just don't want to be deported." That's survival,
Yeah,
also.
survival. Yeah. I mean that what is done is exactly what he described. It's domestication, right? Like we all we can do is think about the next morsel of food or whatever. Like and even beyond survival, what is really affected is our intellectual level, right? Um
Because
and
okay, just one more thing.
yeah.
The Muslims here in this country, I mean, they're one of the richest communities in the world. It's not that they're trying to
Yeah,
survive,
yeah,
but then
exactly. That's
still
what I
you
mean.
see a mentality that is so.
Yeah, it's defeatist. It's what the brother described. That's why I said beyond the survival, it's more of an intellectual issue where
Mm,
we have decided that our paradigm, what Islam is for us, is maybe we don't think about it as deeply, but it's not, it just doesn't have an applicable solution in this day and age. And that's the sort of rhetoric you hear is, from the leadership, if you can call it the leadership. I mean, that's the real issue is that we don't, the lack of a voice comes from a lack of a leadership. And we have no
mm,
confidence in our own paradigm that we have something of our own to offer the world, and that we must have the utmost confidence in it, you know? And that's it's a it's a strange issue just because like you see civilizations, right? You see ethnicities or nationalities that go back to their histories, you know, Chinese or Persian or whatever. They go back like 2,000 years. They say, "Oh, we were this. We had this less like 100 years ago." We don't have to go that far back to realize we have the answers already, right? And that's the issue. But what that entails is a high level of intellectual buildup, I think, to get to that
I
point.
mean, look, to
Right.
see, just to put it out there, I know I keep saying it's the last one, but it's just every time you guys are mentioning something, I mean, look, even the communist or even the leftist or Marxist, whatever we're saying, they're adopting our causes,
Yeah.
right? Palestine is not their cause; it's our cause.
So,
But they're. I mean, what cause do they have? Nobody wants to believe in their cause. I
yeah.
mean, what is the cause? I mean,
I mean, they themselves don't know.
they have no idea, but they're taking our causes and then presenting their solution to what is our cause. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we care for Masjid al-Aqsa or Gaza only because of the Quran and Islam and Muslims. It's
Right.
not that, that's the reality. But it's them that are, I mean, you're finding university professors who are ready to give up their careers, people who are being deported, people who are, it's unbelievable. And I'm just trying to figure, these things out and saying, subhanallah, the fear that exists in the Muslims, you know, where we have, intellectually, when it comes to connection to Islam, taqwa, wara, being close to Allah Azza wa Jal, all of these things are, I mean, nowhere to be found.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's why I keep going back to the word domesticated, right? It's like if you ever seen an animal that's been mistreated, the way it reacts when somebody might even raise its hand to be gentle, it still like flinches, it gets scared. Regardless of what is happening, gets scared because it's just used to something. It's used to being beaten, it's used to being mistreated or starved. And that's unfortunately, that it seems like that's where we're at currently. We're just used to a certain we've accepted our place in the hierarchy in the world that you have to your countries are our countries, the places we come from are messed up beyond repair. All we can do in our lives is basically leave, come someplace in the West, get an education, build our lives for our future generations purely from a material perspective, and that's the best we can do currently. I mean, it's almost like we're waiting for something and inshallah it will come. We know it'll come. The promise is there. But it's like, are we not supposed to be a part of it? Like, is it just going to be given to us on a plate? Those are the questions that need answering. And unfortunately, our community is not. It's not even. It's not even asking those questions as of yet. It's still looking for the solutions that even the people that are quote unquote they support this system are realizing, oh, there are no solutions in this system. Yet we are still trying to find the solutions in this system. And that's the unfortunate reality where we're currently at. And I hate to go back to it, but the little quote I gave about the Uber driving and anxiety medications, that you pointed it out, that is kind of our mentality. Whereas the Americans, the pure, the ones who came up in this rhetoric are seeing its failings and its hypocrisy. We are not. We're still seeing it as the American dream of the old. That look, this is the land of opportunity. And I don't mean to say that like, oh, don't come here, don't do this. It's just that we have to understand the reality, what is actually happening here and how it's going to affect the world. And we have no part to play as we currently are. We're just on the sidelines. And usually the people on the sidelines are the ones that get hit the worst.
All right, brothers. Very interesting conversation. I mean, let's see what happens in the coming days. But yeah, a lot, lots is changing and very quickly. And it's it's I mean the Muslim Ummah, Muslims, we have to figure out where we stand in this. Uh, you know, as things, the way the things stand. If we don't, I mean, we're gonna have to choose something to stand on. And so far, uh, we are thinking that we haven't chosen, but what we have chosen as far as capitalism is concerned, or what, or any other, you know, things that we are looking at, whether they're leftist, rightist, whatever, Democratic, Republican, we're choosing the side of the oppressors. And this is this is something very unbelievable, to be honest. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah Azza wa Jal gives us the tawfiq to see the things that the way they are, and use us, especially in these days, and that to guide humanity, to present Islam as a solution, because at the end of the day, what else do we have? That is the solution. All right, brothers, we'll see you guys next time. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Right. So,
Wa alaikum salam.
yeah.